I'm sorry, but Hamas would brutally destroy people who are a part of Black Lives Matter. They would destroy the leadership. They have nothing in common. They have no idea what they're supporting.
We saw recently a lot of people gathering in the streets in support of Palestine, particularly in Chicago. Chicago was one of those places where they gathered. And particularly, we're seeing folks in the Black Lives Matter movement come alongside Palestine in an effort to make a bridge of similarity. Listen to what was said here. It says, this is from Colin Rugg. It says, multiple Black Lives Matter groups have thrown their support behind the Hamas terrorists who murdered innocent people in Israel. Black Lives Matter Los Angeles justified these actions by the terrorists because they were simply resisting Israel. Let us understand the resistance in Palestine, it's a quote, as an attempt to tear down the gates of the world's largest open-air prison. As a radical Black organization grounded in abolitionist ideals, we see clear parallels between Black and Palestinian people. Black Lives Matter Chicago was a little more direct, as they shared an art piece of a Hamas paraglider with a Palestine flag wild. But I find it interesting to see the intersection between the understanding of some of these Marxist beliefs of oppressor-oppressed categories, making it okay to retaliate in any way. What do you think about that? What's your reaction? Because I think that this gets into some of the conversation that might be helpful for us, because I'm sure there's people that might be watching this or listening to this that know folks that either support Black Lives Matter or might also then be falling into a support, and not just a support, but a justification of the actions we just spent time talking about, because it's in this oppressor-oppressed category.
I'm sorry, but Hamas would brutally destroy people who are a part of Black Lives Matter. They would destroy the leadership. They have nothing in common with the leaders, especially of the LA chapter, and these are people who are part of the LGBT
I was gonna
community,
say, dude,
and
if any of those, yeah,
yeah, they have no idea what they're supporting. They would be thrown off buildings. They would be beheaded. They would be graped as well. There is Hamas looks at them as probably looks at them like how they look at Jews. They have nothing in common.
yeah. I mean, the whole reason. I mean, I see Chuckbug there is like saying I'm a little confused on why BLM relation is in this, and it just boils down to Marxist philosophy. This idea that it's a class thing. Marxists see everything through the eye of class. Everything is a socio-economic class, and and a lot of these people, they see, okay, here's a group of people who have lost in war, who have basically been subdued by another nation for whatever reason, whether or not it's justified or not. They all they see is someone has been beaten, for lack of a better term. They've been beaten in previous wars and battles and skirmishes, and do not have the most political power in the nation. And so therefore, due to that reason, they're oppressed, and therefore they have the right to regain equality, or power, or whatever. And whatever they do can be justified on that premise alone. Now, as for my reaction to that, I go to scripture. Like, for me, I go to scripture, and what I see is, even when there are oppressive governments and you are oppressed, you are to be long suffering and bear with those things. I mean, Romans 13, as we see, it talks about honoring the emperor. The Roman emperor wasn't very friendly to Christians. It wasn't like a delightful freedom of America society. It was rather oppressive. The Christians were being persecuted. They were told, when they were being persecuted and killed by the Roman Empire, or by other people around them who hated them, to endure with long suffering, to share the gospel, and to be merciful and loving to the orphans, to the widows, to all the people, despite how they were being treated. And it was because of that love, it was because of that long suffering, it was because of that mercy that the church spread so fast and rapidly. It was not because of war. It was not because of power. It was not because of military might. It was because of mercy and love and the kindness and the gospel message that came with it. Um, and so whenever my reaction is that my reaction is I want there to be mercy. I want there to be long suffering when people experience oppression. This culture and this mindset of if I'm being oppressed or I'm experiencing injustice, I need to get my rights back. That's not the right mindset.
Mm-hmm.
That is not people. If there is injustice, God will have His way.
Mm-hmm.
God will be the judge. And if there comes an opportunity politically for you to have the ability to change something that is unjust in a peaceful manner, go for it. Pursue
Mm-hmm.
it. I mean, we see that with the slave trade in America. That's exactly what happened. People pursued peaceful ways to help overcome the um, the immoral slave trade in America. It was done a lot by churches pursuing peaceful ways to do so. But
One, and I would also
yeah,
add though, I think what's also happening here, it's deeper than just Marxist ideology though. I think what's happening is that BLM is making a deeper connection, or maybe I'm giving them too much credit, because as Apologia Center says, American liberals don't know what they're talking about. But I see a deeper thread here when you look at the history of Palestine and Israel, when you look at the colonialization that happened, and
mm-hmm.
the place that we're in now very much largely is in part and in due to the United Kingdom and the colonialization that happened in that time. And
Yes,
so you trace that back and you can very easily see how when they're making a comment like that, to say we see very much similarities of being a people who was colonized and our culture was appropriated and taken, we see a
I
very
mean,
common bond there, is what I think they're drawing to. But the problem is, think about the equivocation they're making. They're saying to resist the shackles of this open air prison, their actions were justified. What does
yes,
that make
yeah,
you think then BLM wants to do? That means they're saying any action is justified as long as we can prove that we've been oppressed.
yeah. I mean, even okay. I come from a non-resistant background, so whenever topics of war, I it's always interesting for me. I still lean non-resistant, although I don't completely go pacifist. Um, but it's one of those things where even if there is justified reason for war, justified reason for re- physical retaliation, it is never justified. It's never justifiable to attack innocent civilians, women, children, or anyone like that. And graping people is never a justified tactic. That torture is not a justified tactic. Those things are not justified whatsoever. They are immoral, no matter the case.
Based on the BLM's perspective, it's completely justified. And I think that that's important for people to see, because I think I'm thankful for a quote like this that is just so blatantly clear to say what they see happening is okay. And that's just wild. Sorry, Ryan. It looks like you've got something to say. I cut you off there.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is based on just a surface level understanding of the situation. And, while maybe I'm just a jerk and a bigot and a white, cis, male, Christian, conservative type of guy, maybe all those things are true, but I tend to agree with Arthur. I think that a lot of people just don't really know what they're talking about. And
Yeah.
I think that a lot of folks in this group, um, the cool thing to do, and what a lot of folks want to do in this group, is just oppose what they would label as the mainstream narrative of the
Mhm.
Christian cis, which I hate that word, but I'm using it sort of sarcastically, the Christian cis, conservative viewpoint. And I think that viewpoint has historically been standing alongside of Israel
Yeah.
in the Middle Eastern conflict. And so I think that within this group, it's like super cool right now to be opposed to that, because you're opposing what they would term is mainstream, which I totally disagree. I think it's the opposite of mainstream these days, but that's just my two
Yeah,
cents.
I mean, a lot of things can be driven on each side, far right, far left, can be driven just simply by opposing what your opponent believes. So
Yeah,
like if conservatives are by and large in support of Israel, oh, the far lefties and the people on the far left and the extreme left. I'm not talking about your classical liberal. I'm just talking about your extreme leftists are going to oppose it. They're
Mhm.
just going to oppose it because that's what they know conservatives are for. It's a
yeah,
natural thing that happens in extreme versions of politics.
I would say that maybe there is similarities in one way or another. If you think about how in these riots they were willing to destroy their own people's
Hmm.
properties and their own
Yep.
people's businesses just to make a point because the ends justified the means. I would say that mindset is something that they share in common with Hamas. I
Hmm.
wouldn't say I'm grateful that we live in a country in which something playing out in America like Hamas is forcing to play out in Israel would have been met with even swifter uh, violence in retaliation. If I heard it put this way, right? This is what Hamas is doing is the equivalent of, and this is not my quote, right? But this is their what Hamas is doing is the equivalent of Mexico, like Mexican extremists running into El Paso, shooting up and killing a whole bunch of citizens, graping a whole bunch of citizens, and then dragging people across the border. Like that happening in the United States is such a like we can't even fathom that happening in the United States. It's not something that even comes across our radar of being possible, and I think that's because um, of the conditions that the United States has built. So therefore, an organization like BLM, and when we say BLM, we mean the organization. All right, Black
Mhm.
lives do matter,
Mhm.
obviously, but
Absolutely.
BLM as a communist, socialist organization that only cares about the destruction and destroying America as a whole, the fact that we live in a country where they would not be able to logically play that out to the extreme that somebody like Hamas is currently doing in the Middle East, I'm just grateful that we live in a country like that. But I would say that they do, in fact, share something in common with Hamas, and it is that mindset, the any means necessary and everything is justified mindset, and I think it's
Mm.
disgusting.
Yeah, well, and that's why I want to bring that up, because I think that the clarity here, I think most, if not everyone that I would talk to, would look at what has happened and what Hamas has done and be able to say, I reject that. That's evil. And then, but many of those same people would have been people that may have considered a support of BLM in some way. And so I'm thankful that they're this clear, that they're just this clear to say, hey, we agree with what Hamas has done, free Palestine. And uh, I think that what we're trying to show is there needs to be nuance with how you talk about. You can categorically, uh, completely and totally condemn what Hamas has done while still having a desire for peace and justice for the Palestinian people. I think both of those things can be possible, but you can't you cannot accept what Hamas has done and I think have any serious credibility of any kind of conversation with someone like that.
Thanks so much for watching that clip from the Why Jesus podcast. If you want to see the full episode, click right here, and you can also find us on all streaming services. God bless.